Welcome back everyone. So, if you've been following my last couple of videos, you'll have seen that I've been sort of working my way through trying to gently carve my first neck pocket. Now, at the moment we've only got the pocket to about half the depth of what it finally actually needs to be. One thing I wanted to point out that probably wasn't too clear in my last couple of videos, the bottom of my neck pocket currently is flat. And it's flat because I stuck a router on top of it basically and routed it out all at the same depth, and that was my plan all along. You probably also saw that I created this neck pocket template, which is going to help me get that neck pocket to full depth without the router rocking or slipping too much. Now, what I did want to point out was that normally, the easiest kind of most accepted convention for getting a neck break angle, as far as I can tell, is to actually carve the angle into the bottom of the neck pocket. And the reason for that is because it's quite easy to do if you're using a router. You would basically get a piece of wood that represents your bridge, stick it under this template in the appropriate place, and then stick it down in place, and you now have a template which is at your neck pocket angle. You can then basically run the router over that template and it will carve the angle into the neck pocket. Makes sense. In fact, in addition to that, what you would probably quite often do as well is actually carve the angle into the top of the cap as well, because otherwise the fretboard's going to sink right into the pocket there, which is something I will be doing. However, that is not the construction method that I'm choosing to follow on this occasion. Why? Well, because I like to make life difficult for myself? No, well, not really. The plans that I'm using just so happened to define the neck break angle on the actual neck heel itself, which is generally speaking more tricky to do, certainly by hand anyway. I didn't really think this through, to be honest with you, before I went ahead and carved the neck. I just assumed that would be an okay way to go, and it is. It's just more difficult than using the method I just described to put the angle into the bottom of the pocket. So the problem I have at the moment is I have my heel, which does have an angle in it. I'm not entirely sure that it's going to be the perfect angle for the bridge I'm using at this point. There's no point me actually trying to work out how many degrees. I mean, the plan says the angle for this template is 5 degrees, but there's no point me trying to check that against my current bridge at the moment, because I can't be that accurate with a calculator and a protractor and all that kind of thing. I really need to figure it out on the guitar itself. So this definitely isn't the most ideal way I'm going about things, because I'm literally just kind of tweaking as I'm going and more or less hoping for the best. But before we can get too concerned over the angle itself, as I already pointed out in a previous video, the heel itself, as I look down it, is ever so slightly twisted. As is probably the fretboard. Well, I wouldn't say it's twisted, but if we look at the end of it, you might just be able to tell on the camera there that it's a little bit thicker on the right hand side than it is on the left hand side. Now, I've already cut the neck pocket according to the dimensions, or the outer dimensions, on the left and right hand side of the neck, so I can't really alter those or start trying to tilt them in one direction or the other. But what I would really like to do is to just try and take a plane to the top of the fretboard and the bottom of the heel to try and square them up a little bit with the existing sides. If I check up the neck with my set square, on this side it actually looks pretty square right the way up the neck. If anything, I think the fretboard does get a little bit high just on this edge as we come towards this end of the neck, But also, if I look at the very end and look at the surface I've actually glued the fretboard to, it does look relatively square to this face. However, the other side I think is another story. It's not bad at all up at the top end of the neck, but certainly gets high as we come towards this end of the neck, and it's just not quite right. And I think if anything I might have planed more off this side of the neck when I've tried to square off the end. So I want to kind of take this edge as my trusted edge, if you like, and just try and level off the fretboard as best I can in relation to that trusted edge, and then we've got at least two surfaces that we think are square with each other. Alright, so I've got the workpiece clamped down, I've got no tension on the truss rod, and I've got just a little bit of support underneath the middle of the neck there, which is the old offcut from the blank. And using this straight edge, I can see that there is definitely a dip in the middle, and I'm pretty sure it's because of a high point at this corner where I've already discussed. If I move the straight edge to the back side of the neck, it's still there slightly. So it could be that this fretboard's just not really straight at the moment. There could have been some shift in the neck, who knows. But I'm going to have a little go now at planing it flat. The dip is taking a little bit longer than I anticipated to get out. It's actually bringing out some really nice kind of greyish streaking in the ebony as I'm planing it. But what I'm also doing is recutting these fret slots as I go, because I had some lovely nice mitered fret slots in there, and I really don't want to have to try and cut them freehand after I've planed this down. So I'm just carrying on those cuts, making them a little bit deeper as I'm taking the height of the fretboard down. Okay, so that's just about as level as I can get it. Certainly a hell of a lot better than it was. I'd say if anything, I might have created an ever so slight dip at the bottom end of the fretboard, but I do mean slight, and that's not necessarily too much of a bad thing. But what we need to remember is I need to radius the thing yet, and I don't want to get it too thin that it's going to leave nothing left when I radius it. So I think while I'm here, I might as well put that radius into the fretboard, because that's just going to make life easier for us when calculating the angle, the neck break angle that is. So I don't know if you can see here on the camera, but you can actually tell where the radiusing block is hitting on the fretboard for two reasons. Number one, this build-up of sawdust in the middle. You can see when I'm running over it with the radiusing block, it's not clearing that sawdust because it's not actually touching that area of the fretboard yet, because naturally it's going to take the edges down first. Second of all, it's probably not too easy to see on camera. I'll try going freehand and see if I can pick it up for you. The plane itself leaves quite a sheen on the wood. It gets a very smooth finish, whereas I'm doing this with pretty rough sandpaper, so I can tell based off the fact there's still a sheen kind of in the centre of some of these frets that I haven't touched those bits with the radius block yet, so I do need to keep going. I'm going to have to keep checking as I go just to make sure that I'm not creating high spots or low spots or anything like that.
"20 minutes later." 1 hour later. Three hours later.
Can you move it along? I'm all out of time cards.
One eternity later.
Okay, so a lot of sanding later. Let's have a sit rep. Just go freehand again. The sanding's bringing out a nice subtle grain in the fretboard, which is great. I really like it. It's a nice piece of wood. The radiusing is pretty much done, and even though when I was about done with the plane the fretboard wasn't looking perfectly level, it's now looking absolutely spot on at any point I measure it, which is absolutely fantastic. The only thing that gets a little bit weird is when we look at the ends. Now, it's not as bad as it was because I've done a little bit of sanding work on it since then. You might be able to see that this side is still a little bit thicker than this side. So it's almost like I've dipped down on this side. But like I said, there's not really any dips because the fretboard seems really flat right the way along. What's even weirder is if I pop along to the other end, we've got much the same story but in reverse. It's actually high on the treble side. Now I'd imagine what's happened is, bearing in mind I was sanding this fretboard the other way around, I've just remounted it on the desk, it was the other way. I think it must just be a natural tendency to push more when I've been sanding like this, even though I've been kind of stood at the end trying to do it as even as possible. There's just been a bit of a twist. So I flipped it round 180 and I'm now going to just try and continue to work it, and maybe even just actually put a little bit of emphasis on the sides that are thicker as I sand, and hopefully it will even out. Because I think as it is at the moment, it would be playable. It would probably be to some extent acceptable, but I'm worried, especially when I've got a radius on the fretboard, a fairly small radius on the fretboard. I don't want it to cause it to start muting out when you bend or anything like that. So, more sanding, I'm afraid.
Thousand years later.
So While that is still not 100% perfect, it's a damn sight better than it was. It might look a little bit skinnier than it actually is on this corner because there was a tiny little chip came off the corner there with planing. Thankfully I left that excess on the end, so that isn't really a problem. It's really hard to judge, to be fair, because as I said many a time, nothing on this is square. For all I know, I could have really kind of planed the fretboard down to a tilt to match the top of this, but it looks good, it feels good. As long as it plays good, I really don't think we're going to have a problem. Let's check out the nut end. Again, hopefully you can see. Might not be perfect, but it's a lot closer than it was. So there we have it. Once again, what I kind of planned as a minor incidental job for the day has kind of turned into, well, a massive piece of work that has lasted the whole day. But I'm glad we did that, because it just takes one more piece of guesswork out of the equation when we come to do that all important neck pocket and measure the geometry and all the rest of it. As I say, I doubt it's going to be 100% spot on perfect, but it looks damn good to me. So yeah, I think I'm happy with that. Plans for next time? Well, to be honest with you, I'm getting a little bit sick of all the mess and the cramped nature in here, and I've been working without a working vacuum cleaner for the past couple of videos, and the sawdust and everything is just mounting up and mounting up. So I think the next time I have some time free, the next job is actually going to be to basically tidy up and start dismantling this place, ready to move it down the workshop. So if there is a little bit of a gap in between this video and the next one, at least in terms of the guitar build, that's probably why. Probably means I'm just prepping the workshop, but then it does mean we're hopefully going to be able to go full steam ahead with the videos in the future. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, which turned out to be how to radius a fretboard. But until next time, goodbye.